This will be a significant week in the fight for peace. The very same fight, the fight to end the influence of the modern British financial empire. Seems strange to say that we're going to war for peace, but that's exactly what's happening this week. French President Emmanuel Macron is at the White House today, pleading with Trump to continue the war against Russia in Ukraine. Keir Starmer, the public face of the City of London imperial banking crowd, will be here Thursday, making the very same plea. Now, the German population delivered a resounding defeat to the war party over the weekend by delivering the lowest vote totals ever for the establishment parties, the CDU and the SPD, and giving anti-war populists, led by the Alternative for Deutschland, hugely significant votes. Today is the third anniversary of Russia's special operation in Ukraine, a genocidal war provoked by the British and their American puppet led by Joe Biden. The Middle East remains on tenterhooks as both Hamas and Israel attack Trump's efforts at peace. In the U.S. itself, Trump continues to dismantle the security state, and the House will attempt to put forward a budget for the country. Over the weekend, Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the Pentagon, and FBI Director Kash Patel appointed Dan Bongino as his deputy director of the FBI. I'm Barbara Boyd, and this is your Monday Brief, in which we try to forecast the most important stories for the week, which we will cover at Promethean Action. You should go there and become a member and join the conversation. Now, this has become a real challenge because of the revolutionary pace of change Donald Trump and his cabinet have undertaken to fulfill the policy platform Americans voted for. But I'll do my best. Just a note here parenthetically, you may have seen fake polls over the weekend saying that Trump was declining in popularity. Many other polls say the opposite. It's another one of these futile efforts by the former deep state to continue to exert some influence. It isn't working, and what Trump is doing is overwhelmingly supported. Now, as we look at the current state of play in Trump's peace offensive, Germany's election results from Sunday will play a decisive role. There, the AfD, Germany's populist, anti-war, anti-open borders, pro-nation state party, secured 20% of the vote. The massive effort to prevent them from getting more catapulted the CDU-CSU to a first-place finish at 28%, the lowest vote ever for the Christian Democrats. This is a major development which will inspire other peace parties throughout Europe as the oligarchs dig in and double down on war and the green policies, recognizing that if the truth be told about the causes of the war in Ukraine and the unnecessary murder of millions, their populations will revolt at the level that the American population has already revolted here. The CDU leader, Friedrich Merz, is a Ukraine war hawk and free speech opponent, but also a critic of Germany's absurd open borders policy, which he used to garner the vote. Most analyzing the results predict that Germany, once the corner of European economies and political stability, will continue to descend into ungovernability and economic depression, with the Alternative for Deutschland pledging to dismantle the entire globalist enterprise there. The green and censorship policy of the British Empire as state religion in Germany, and the now deposed German Chancellor, the SPD's Olaf Scholz, took a huge step toward the present collapse of German manufacturing and industry by capitulating totally when the Biden administration blew up the Nord Stream pipeline carrying the Russian gas, which was the lifeblood of German industry. The main driver of the Ukraine war is Britain's long game of splitting Russia from Europe, and Germany in particular, following the fall of the Berlin Wall. They want Eurasia as a looting ground for their empire, and Russia, with its long-standing relationship to the various parts of post-Soviet Eurasia stands in their way. When the wall fell, Germany still had a strong nationalist and technologically progressive industrial and manufacturing perspective. The British attacked that relentlessly as authoritarian, comparing that outlook to the industrialists who supported the rise of Hitler. Now, that rise of Hitler, of course, was mainly facilitated by British interests, including the Morgan interests in the United States, in their long-standing war to actually win Eurasia and collapse Russia as part of their empire. A critical aspect of the modern stage of this warfare has been the natural gas agreements with Russia, which preceded all the color revolution activity in Ukraine. Ukraine was the pipeline conduit for Russian gas coming to Europe and a critical source of revenue for the Russian state. The color revolution plan centered on cutting Russian gas and substituting Texas LNG at exorbitant windfall profit prices for that oil and gas international political network. That was the source of the Biden family's corrupt and illicit dealings in Ukraine through the gas company Burisma. In the bizarre way that the German government works, the CDU will now form a coalition government with the SPD, the party of Schultz, which the voters totally rejected on Sunday. Some democracy, in quotes, as Vice President Vance noted in his speech at the Munich Security Conference last weekend. The Brits, together with a vast and very influential lobby of the Ukrainian diaspora here, and NATO and the EU, continue to try to keep the war going. They want U.S. security guarantees to keep the war going. They continue to back Zelensky's justifications for not holding elections in Ukraine as demanded by Trump in the name of true democracy. The Brits have just done new sanctions on Russia. Explosions were hurled at the Russian consulate in Marseille, France this morning. The Russians had predicted that the Ukrainians and their NATO sponsors would engage in a variety of terrorist attacks in order to blow up Trump's peace negotiations. The Trump administration has demanded that Ukraine agree to jointly develop its rare earth minerals with the United States in order to fund the rebuilding of the country, which has been reduced to a rubble field, and pay us back in some way for the billions that Biden spent there of taxpayer money. Zelensky is adamantly refusing to sign that. Meanwhile, in reality, the Russians continue to advance on the battlefield, and Trump continues to warn about the realities on the ground rather than the endless lying about them, as has been the case for the last 3 years. Hold elections and allow negotiations now, Trump demands, or else you won't have a country left. That is the reality. In the Middle East, Israel has delayed the last hostage prisoner exchange for phase 1 of the peace deal negotiated by Trump. This excuse was provided by Hamas, which turned over the wrong body of one of the hostages and holds abusive ceremonies at each point of prisoner hostage exchanges. Each of the sides in this battle knows the pain and provocation points of their hated enemies on the other side and fully exploits these at every turn. Netanyahu needs this war to stay in power in Israel and escape responsibility for what happened in the Hamas terrorist attack. Hamas has the same need. The type of peace represented by Trump's Abraham Accords spell the doom of this Islamic terrorist group, which Israel itself had funded for years in order to prevent a secular nationalist Palestinian leadership from taking power. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, will be on an urgent mission to push the second phase of the ceasefire agreement into existence this week. In addition, the Arab states of Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, along with the Gulf, will be presenting an alternative to Trump's plan for Palestinian immigration and U.S. ownership and development of Gaza. Both Gaza and the West Bank were former lands of Egypt in the case of Gaza, and Jordan in the case of the West Bank. They are part of Israel only because of previous British instigated wars in the Middle East. Now, we here have emphasized that the strategic backdrop of many of Trump's moves implicitly embrace the idea of an alliance between the United States, Russia, China, and India, the nations of the world who hold the most advanced populations and economies, to develop the world and explore space in a new type of renaissance of human adventure and productivity. Will Wirtz gave a class on that over the weekend, which you can find on Promethean Action. That means the end of the post-war British financial empire, the death knell of the European oligarchs. And that is what all the shouting and pleas for continued killing is really all about. Over the weekend, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth surfaced the beginning reorganization of the Pentagon by firing the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Charles C.Q. Brown, and other firings of generals who have proven to be failures as warriors will follow. Musk is deploying a team of auditors to this central player in the modern security state, which Trump is restructuring to defend the country rather than acting as the global policeman for British strategic interests. Happily, Dan Bongino, the popular podcaster, particularly with young people, and former Secret Service agent and NYPD officer, has been picked by Kash Patel to be his deputy at the FBI. So there is now a solid team at the Department of Justice, and as they get their feet on the ground, we will begin to see imminently the truths about the assassinations of JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King, and Donald Trump, the truth about 9/11, the truth about the Epstein spy operation, and other intelligence operations which almost destroyed our country. The House will also surface its budget this week, which many say does not reflect the president's priorities. We'll have to see what the product is. A particular problem is the devotion of so-called budget hawks there to cutting Medicaid, which President Trump opposes. Again, we'll cover it on the website along with our perspective. Susan will see you for the midweek on Wednesday. I'll see you again on Saturday. In the meanwhile, get over to the site, join Promethean Action as a member, get involved in the conversation there, and hopefully give us the funding to continue this. Thanks very much for listening. I'll see you again on Saturday.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.